we make robots and we don't, in fact, build empathy into these robots. But sometimes when people come and see our robots, they believe that there is some kind of empathy in them. And they feel empathetic towards the robots more than the other way around, of course.
I think what's interesting, and I haven't thought this fully through, is that, the robot that shows empathy was actually installed by the company, right? So, in a sense, this was added to the whole environment in order to control people. So, empathy here really is a means to control people. But I don't know, it's just a thought that starts to build. But maybe you have something clever to say about that.
Not me.
I don't either, really, to tell you the truth.
But do you share?
I kind of share that view, although I'm not sure. I think empathy here is used as we would like to use it today, for believability, for usability to a certain extent. But I think what that robot showed was real empathy, in fiction at least, when he patted the guy on the back with his gripper. That's something that, I mean...
It could be a very mean way of empathy, right?
Well, it turned out well in the end, right? He helped him. In fact, that's just one of the laws of, one of the principles of that robot, that it helps people. So, but you had a more deep intuition.
So I would like to refer to what Daniel said and to this statement, that in general, we have like conflict there because the robot is installed by the company, so it is working for the company, and I hope that the programmer wasn't dumb and it put that the most important objective of its existence is to gain the profit for the company, but it's still having this difficult choice. What is more important? Either protect the worker and support him, or gain the profit for the company. So this might be really the question about the empathy, what is the choice that is making? Not really by some actions per se, but by the choice, the whole path.
Not really an answer from my part, but I guess this robot has to have these capabilities, otherwise this person goes nuts living there 3 years. I don't know what our psychology colleagues would say about this.
Yeah, that's a valid question for our psychologists, actually. They are qualified to answer.
So how far are we in the development of anything similar to what we see here? I mean, obviously that looks a bit advanced.
We're very far from it, in my opinion.
I would imagine.
But I would say it's an interesting movie for several reasons, in my opinion. First, for some technical reasons. Often sci-fi movies depict robots that look human, that can move in a human way, and that can do very complex things from the point of view of their body. This robot is very interesting because there is very little about it that is sophisticated in terms of how it moves. Okay, they showed some usage of an appendage that can grasp things, but that's really not the central point. They made some very practical assumptions on the robot. So that it filters out that source of complexity. Another source of complexity they filtered out was the way the robot was empathizing with the human. It was a smiley face. And this is very interesting for us because it shows that in order to be empathetic, you don't necessarily need to recreate the entire range of emotions that you can transmit via face or via cuddly movements of a teddy bear, as Tosha showed earlier. It's really enough to show a smiley face with a little tear. That was a sad scene, and we perceived it as sad here, although the robot was fictitious. So those are two sources of complexity that have been filtered out from the movie. Of course, we're still very far, and we're far because the robot could predict what Sam was doing. The robot could really plan. The robot could empathize. In fact, I think that's really the point of the movie. The robot could cooperatively achieve the same goal as Sam or help Sam in achieving his goal. And think ahead so far and understand also from non-explicit information, so therefore infer knowledge from what it saw. And that's very far for us.
Well, Kevin Spacey is very talented.
Yes, Kevin Spacey is talented.
But I think actually the robot is one of the easiest things in this, like technical challenges needed to have this
Yeah.
base on the moon and automated harvesters and so. But as you were saying, probably the reasoning and the communication capabilities of the robot were the only part which is really difficult. So the rest, from a hardware point of view, we could do now.
Oh yeah.
Can I ask another question?
Of course.
So I
Or
still
give an answer,
think
preferably.
I'm still not convinced. I think the company is evil, and they had to put this robot here that shows empathy. And is it maybe that this robot has to have the ability to step over the initial boundaries that it's given, just so in order to be able to show empathy, and that as a side effect, it then helped the human to escape?
The part where I saw it stepping over the boundaries, in fact, I think is false perception of it stepping over its boundaries. That is when it seemed to have conflicting goals. You can't allow the guy out, but there's a valid reason to do so. That's also, by the way, something we don't really know how to do, or we don't know how to do well in AI, at least. That's one part where I could see stepping over boundaries. I think in practice, this robot has an order in which, or preferences on how it should or which goals it should achieve. Protecting Sam might be the highest one, but I think there's a lot more sophisticated going on in this robot for it to do this and for it to give us the impression that it's stepping over a boundary, when actually it's just reordering, maybe even dynamically, the order of the goals that it's wanting to achieve. If I understand your comment, at least.
But it could also be a new interpretation of its own goals. Because if the highest order is the highest priority is to protect the guy, because it is very expensive to make a clone, probably, then it can just reinterpret its own objectives just to help the guy out to flee. So it would be kind of making its own rules but actually leaving what the company intended.
Reprogramming itself somehow, but to achieve even a higher. It could be, yes, it's a good observation. Someone in the back there had a question.
Yeah, he actually answered the question, but because I also think that the main programming of that robot is to protect that guy. So I think the same as him, that it doesn't matter what happened. The first priority is to keep the human alive. So he don't have a choice than other to let him go.
That's a valid speculation.
Yeah. And Marcello?
Wait. No, it's okay. It's okay.
No, ruin it for all of us.
I hate the microphone. I hate the mic. I don't use it. In any case, yeah, I really like this movie. As you know, I loved it also for the third time. But I don't think we should overthink about the objectives coded by the company into the robot if they weren't even able to make an automatic break to the bloody harvester. Yeah. I mean, try to bring a bloody harvester on the moon, how expensive it is, and he went straight for the tower. And that's not, I mean, we shouldn't rationalize it too much. No company, no one of us would ever make a robot that cannot stop, and it costs like billions of dollars.
No, it's a movie.
Exactly.
It was essential for the plot, I think.
And that's exactly my point. Again, I mean, let's not overthink about the objectives that were coded and if it was a bug or rather a feature.
No, I think you're right. A lot of this, the robot seeming to grow and to change throughout the movie is part of the plot. It's a normal plot-driving feature to have characters which change.
But
the
there are.
Didn't change. I mean,
his priorities changed in a way.
Yeah.
Gherkin was. I mean, when he started again, it was with the same sentence. So I mean, I don't see a real change. I just see a routine that goes in a different way. It's a dynamic programming thing. I mean, that goes
That's
dynamically.
what you see as a researcher, but I think on a general term, he did change. In the beginning, he was refusing to help him.
It's still
Well, it was Kevin Spacey, really. So.
Yeah. Also, I mean, a valid question is why do they need the human at all?
Exactly.
That's more of a question.
Yes, that's a good point.
I mean,
And
they could easily transfer this with another automated vehicle to the base.
Yeah.
It's not that tough, and then they don't need a huge base like this either.
Yeah, but there is the point. There is the contingency that you cannot predict.
Yes, and then you send the rescue ship, right?
The only functionality of the human vehicle is to drive a vehicle,
Exactly.
which on an empty space is not so high.
And this is, by the way, one of the things that we really are beginning to know how to do: drive vehicles automatically. So
And they do not bump into obstacles.
No, but if it's an American movie, it has to have a conspiracy.
Of course, yeah.
But
Nevertheless.
I think in terms of ethics, I mean, you're kind of making a human to be the subordinate of a robot. And as Todor said, and that was my idea from the beginning, how absurd. You have so much technology to harvest helium from the moon and to ship it back, and you have that person only as a mule who goes, takes out those containers and ships them back when automated. And then you make this complicated software to keep the human person from committing suicide, because loneliness in humans leads to suicide. So it was so much like, I don't know, against everything that can be productive.
But in the end, it's a movie.
And engineers have the tendency to debunk everything, and as you can see, as those of you who are not can see, so is there any observation from a non-researcher, apart from the few who have? Okay. So to conclude, I just wanted to say one word. We are really, really grateful for all of you who came. We're very grateful for those of you who stepped in at the last moment, Krzysztof and Yasmin, who isn't here, who helped in manning the front door and doing these things. Really, thank you very much. And it was really a pleasure. So see you next year, I guess. Right?